Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hidden Existence. Hope everybody is doing all right out there tonight. With me is my co-host on a Wednesday night. It's Brent Thomas from the Paranormal Portal. How are you doing, Brent?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks for having me back. I'm glad that I haven't worn out my welcome yet, but looking forward to tonight's conversation.
Yeah, no, you will never warm out your welcome. Warm out your welcome. Oh, dear, it's getting late already, isn't it? Time for bed. But we're going to have a good show tonight.
Yeah.
I'm going to get my words right and together. And we've got a great guest with us, not just a biologist, but a vertebrate zoologist, hepatology. Okay, there's so many qualifications here. Right, it'll take me too long to read them all out, but we'll get to know you a little bit more. It's Dan Nedrelo. How you doing, Dan?
Really good. Thanks for having me.
You are very welcome. We have actually spoke before. I know you came on BIGFOOT ODYSSEY a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a while. So we will catch up a little bit with you and your interest in Bigfoot. And I know you also spend a lot of time with Shane Carpenter and Randy Harrington and everything's that's going on in the 400. So it'll be interesting to hear your take
Sure.
on that area and what goes on down there. But let's start at the beginning, really, about your interest in biology and wildlife and all that good stuff.
In other words, what happened and how did I end up here?
Exactly.
Okay.
What's that?
My dad was killed when I was 5. The same month my grandfather died. And I can remember sitting on a table kind of with all of these adults going, "Don't you want to go to the funeral?" And I'm like, "No." And it made me think, okay, number one, nothing's guaranteed, so I better do it now. And number two, what do I want to do? And so I started thinking about things like that real early. By the time I was in 3rd grade, I decided I wanted to be a herpetologist because there weren't any dinosaurs left officially.
Right.
And so I started studying reptiles and amphibians, but I was interested in all animals. And so I figured probably photography too, because if I live the life that I want to, it's going to be weird and unusual enough that I probably should verify or record it, you know. And then eventually I got into wildlife photography and eventually publication in my late teens. But I wasn't real good at school because my interests were so different than everybody else's. And it was basically everything from insects to blue whales and everything. So basically, zoology is what kind of pushed me along. And everything was going pretty smooth until 5th grade when the teacher mentioned the word abominable snowman. And that coincided with the Patty film. And by golly, there were books on that. And I ran into Ivan T. Sanderson's book, Abominable Snowman Legend Come to Life. And I checked that out about 20 times all the way to my high school year. Never found adults that could discuss this professionally. And I ended up in 7th grade at a church camp in the pine woods of Wisconsin, and we had something on the edge of a lake making noises like a bull snake, genus Pituophis, and it was just hissing loudly. I couldn't believe the volume coming out of this, and I'm trying to think in my 7th grade mind, what animal can make this noise, avoid all the lights from the students, and so quickly move from one point to another around the lake? And I didn't have an answer. So I ended up going into wildlife biology as well. This just continued to fuel, and my interest in reptiles was a little bit out of hand. I started raising everything from rattlesnakes to alligators once the gators became available, and doing environmental education programs, and eventually worked for the Department of Natural Resources Endangered Species Bureau, and they put me on commercial take of turtles, gave me a boat, said there's the Mississippi River. And then I also worked on Massasauga rattlesnakes, and I'd planned to go back to college for a master's on timber rattlesnakes, but I did not do that. I ended up taking some other positions, and I worked as an environmental assessment biologist for everybody, just entities all over, whether Department of Transportation, Department of the Army, Nature Conservancy, et cetera, et cetera. And I spent more and more time doing public speaking because that seemed to be where the bucks were. And I took in as much travel as I could. By the time I was 50, I'd been to Florida 18 times and eventually ended up in Australia, Tasmania, New Zealand, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Haiti, Dominican Republic, and a little bit of Canada. And then all the states except for about 5 of them, which I'm hoping to nail as soon as I can. I've got a trip planned to Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire, and then I'm thinking about Alaska real quick, and then all I've got left is Hawaii. So
Wow.
that might sum up some of it anyway. The photography started kicking in, and I started working with other professional photographers, and I had to compete against them to place my images to get published. Unfortunately, I won a few, so I have been published over 100 different books and magazines. So I've
That's
worked with quite a
amazing.
few photographers in Europe and in North America.
Yeah. That's incredible from, your father's death to have that feeling, knowing that you want to do something, because not many people get that, or it's a lot later in life before you get that. And
I saw some tragedy. Pardon me for jumping in, but I saw some tragedy, and losing my father and losing my grandfather in the same month made me realize there isn't any guarantee for tomorrow, man. So you better make it rock. And so that's what I did. And I was pretty much all testosterone for 25 years, just pedal to the metal and just get there. Mountains, swamps, jungles, wherever I could go.
Yeah.
So I worked for the Department of, I worked for Milwaukee Public Museum for a while, and did some volunteer work for some other organizations, and eventually was hired as a consultant in some situations and a lot of lectures and presentations. I haven't done many speaking engagements with Sasquatch, but that's coming, I think. I've done a few.
That's a huge, enormous pedigree to draw on. And contrary to most popular thinking, most people with that kind of pedigree don't then make the leap into something like Sasquatch just because it's considered the taboo or the woo side of biology. But I got to commend you for still pursuing that and taking that leap, because I think your background and experience lends a lot of credibility to those of us that are looking.
Well, thank you. I knew they were real just by the behavioral sequences. And so studying that when I was in my 20s just padded. And then once I was able to start working with witnesses and hearing what they had to say, and as Cliff likes to say, you get congruent information from 2 or 3 or 4 different sources that shouldn't even know how to detail that information up, and it matches. That's incredible, really. Yeah. And then you're able to compare that with others, and then you work with illustrators like Alex Evans and Sibylla Irwin and Peter Travers and so many others that are coming up and now using CGI and other methods. We're getting some incredible information, but again, a lot of it's anecdotal and a lot of it's unverified, but it matches. And so our baseline knowledge grows, and then we get people like Shane who simply won't say no and continues the trail hard. And Randy's the same way. So we've got 2 incredible field men there, and there are others out there as well. And as these lines start to come together, there's a lot to learn, and I think we're going to be pretty amazed.
And I think that's very powerful. Sorry, Daniela, go ahead.
Okay. No, it's fine.
Well, sorry. What I was going to say is I think I do really respect what you're saying about, because I think a lot of people dismiss it. They dismiss the importance and the information that's gleaned from these encounters. That I think it gives us a window into at least a rudimentarily behavioral model of these beings. So it through hundreds or thousands of these reports, there's such congruities or content. What am I trying to say? Such consistencies. And I think
consistencies and similarities, yes.
Yeah, and that really does help give us a body of knowledge, at least to start forming some kind of a behavioral model of these beings. And I think that
Sure.
that's incredible.
Sure.
Yeah, sorry, I was just on another thing, but yeah, it is fascinating, isn't it? But what was the actual? Yes, you'd heard anecdotal evidence. You've heard evidence, witness evidence. But when did you finally see one? When was your time that it was like, yes, this is for real?
Actually, I did not see one until I had hooked up with Shane. And I'll tell that story now. I've had experiences at night where, had I had night vision, I'm sure I would have got my view. But in this case, I had just finished at a university teaching a reptile class, putting the animals away. I wasn't able to get on the road until 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, come flying out of southwestern Wisconsin, zip through Iowa and zip through Missouri to get down about at the Arkansas border in that area. And by the time I got there, it was about 2:30 in the morning. And I had given the guys a call. Shane came up and got me, took me back to camp, and he's like, "Well, you just drove all day. I'm sure you probably want to just hit the hay." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? It is prime time, baby. Let's roll." So we got the gear together, and Randy and Shane and I went out about approximately 1,000 yards or so, and there was something that seemed a little unusual, a little peculiar, a little repetitive, and Randy felt this could be the target species we're looking for right here. And by golly, if it wasn't, Shane ended up walking in on it and got to within 7 to 8 feet. And I'm sure you've heard that story a number of times. And I was right there watching the whole thing, not really hoping that he would do that. I didn't know him or Randy real well. So they were a little bit in an argument. And I kind of coincided with Randy, worrying that if we push, maybe we won't get the activity we're hoping for. We don't want to break trust or anything like that. We want to become something that they can easily investigate and not have a reason to not investigate us, But anyway, it worked all really well because that night they did come into camp. We found the next morning there was like a soiled, there was like a hand wipe that had been pulled out, and there was like a finger impression in that, a big finger impression. So that was interesting.
Yeah, so that must have spiked this whole thing even more for you, seeing stuff like that for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Because this thing is so hard to believe, isn't it? Unless you really see one. I mean, as much as I do believe,
Mm-hmm.
and I know just actually seeing evidence would completely cement it, I think.
Well, I've been lucky enough to see a little bit more than that particular individual as well. But again, the resolution and the machinery that we have been using needs to be improved. And now with the big gun drone that Randy's got, that's going to help significantly. And everybody's excited to see the results with that. And then recently he had gotten some more through another machine that they had picked up. So I'm looking forward to seeing precisely what's available for equipment that we'll be using in the future, and to respectfully use it in such a way that it doesn't seem like it's a chase or some, we're trying to document, we're trying to learn as much as we can. And obviously the most interesting part of this is the fact that we get repeat observations because we're not pushing anything. We're kind of letting them come to us. And so it's a long period of time with basically respect and patience. And a lot of people probably don't have that, but
Sure.
we've got plenty.
Now, how big would you suppose the first one you saw was? I mean,
Shane went up on it, and I would say it was less than 200 pounds. And we have a photograph of him laying in the exact spot that it was laying. And he got to within 7 or 8 feet of it. And he's got a photograph eventually that he's going to share. There we go. Good job. That's where it was. It was looking at him through the grass. He was on the other side. And again, within 7 to 8 feet away. And he walked in close enough where very little happened. He turned his back to it. He went, as I understand, he went back again. There was some tooth chatter and one rock was thrown, not 7, not 12, but 1. And then that was enough to, okay, there's some agitation or nervousness. We've done great. Thank you very much. And he came back to us. We high-fived and hiked it back to the tents.
Yeah. If anybody doesn't know, Shane was being directed by you guys. And is this when you were watching it on the thermal?
Right. That's exactly.
It, yeah.
Randy and I were, well, Randy, this is something that Randy's been doing for quite some time, and I'm just the guy the neutral guy that comes in to verify that yes, this actually happened. So, and then whatever methods and techniques that I can come up with that are helpful, I certainly share with the guys, and we try to, it's a constant case of tweaking to improve things. It wasn't too long ago that this year that. With the time off from COVID and things like that, there wasn't a lot of activity for a number of years. So we lost track of some of the individuals that we had. We had a presumed male with a 14-inch plus footprint. There was another adult or near adult that was in the 13, 14 range. And then we had 2 with about 10-inch prints. And 2.5 years later, we're down to a 9.5. We seem to have found a 14-inch, and then we just got verification of a 6-inch. And there's some images that match the timing of this. Randy was riding in a 4-wheeler, and a rock was thrown and hit. They went back to the location to see where this was, and they found the 6-inch print, the 14-inch print, and a rock sitting on a log, which obviously was placed there. So those are some interesting incidences. And I've got images of all those things.
Yeah, Randy sent me a video, actually. Not Randy, Shane. Is that the one? With him coming in the truck?
Let's take a look. It could be.
Let's do that.
It could be.
Let me get it up.
So I definitely want to use anything he sent on. And thank you, Shane. Who's that guy? That's just kind of that's what that video shows us is, well, me, but also the vehicle that was hit, and also just you can see the terrain that we have there. I mean, there's just a tremendous amount of area when it's green for cover and hiding. So these guys can be virtually anywhere, ditches, on the hill. They've got plenty of locations where they can observe from a distance and not feel pushed or pressured. And that's what the hope is from us.
Yeah. Just before, sorry, if anyone has any questions, put them in caps. I will put them to the side, and then towards the end of the show, I will ask Dan any questions that you've got. But just before we carry on, Randy's here, and he says there was a body impression in the grass during the investigation. The next morning was about 5 foot juvenile, or a big one.
That's kind of what I'm wondering, because the foot sizes that you're talking about outside of the 14-inch one, most of them are much smaller. Do you think that you're mostly interacting with potentially juveniles and that the adults are steering clear, or do you have an opinion on that?
Oh, I think that's probably the case. We seem to be having more interaction with the young ones. On the night that I was there, on the 2 nights that I was there where we had activity, they came into camp. Now, who came into camp specifically, I don't believe we know, but certainly at least one of the juveniles, if not both. And that was a wonderful night because on the audio that Randy picked up, we had all the items on the table being looked at and tampered with gently, not raccoon-like, but everything was basically immaculate. But you could hear fingernails or items being touched, and eventually they got to the medical bag, and that was zipped and unzipped about, I believe, 18 times, which is kind of interesting. And it didn't stop there. There was some sounds that suggested perhaps the cooler was opened, and by golly, they were missing appropriately 6 monster cappuccinos. From what I understand, Shane and Randy have never found those empty cans yet. So where they went?
There's a bunch of agitated juveniles out in the woods now.
I mean, what's cool is that if it is this family that Shane's been following, and they've had off the juveniles, and then now there's another young one about. I mean, these are having a good experience with humans if they're hanging around the area. And who's to say the younger generation and then the younger one again is becoming less? There's no fear being passed on by these adults. Say, I mean, this could be a way of maybe being able to gain the trust of a young one somehow. If that situation comes up, I don't know. It just feels like some Sasquatch know to stay away from, or some of the juveniles know to stay away, or the kind of annoying people or playing tricks and stuff like that. Whereas this could be totally different, where it's always been a positive interaction.
Well, I think you hit on a lot of points, and certainly people vary in behavior. And actually, Shane had spent a lot of time making sure that, he'd spent some time checking me out before he invited me over. And I happen to be a very passive, very gentle type observer. I mean, I hunted rattlesnakes for over 25 years, and I have virtually no fear of them whatsoever. I don't do anything silly. I've never been envenomated. Former zookeeper, so I've worked with cobras and just all kinds of things that most people would be running from. There's a nice 255-pound me at the during summer, but I'm down to 235 now, and I'm planning on making 200, so I can climb those hills again.
Congratulations.
What sort of snake's that?
That's a northern water snake out of Ohio.
Right, got you.
And I would just like to say that these guys are misidentified all the time. And
Right.
of course, most people are like, oh, they do chase you. They chased me. And of course, if you say anything to the contrary, you weren't there. You wouldn't know this. Well, what I'd know is that the snakes don't see well, they don't hear, and when they get scared, they drop into the water. Now, if you put your canoe or boat underneath them, they're going to drop into your boat. And of course, people are certainly thinking, well, then they're going to come after me. Well, if you freeze, you aren't even part of the picture. They're just trying to figure out, where the heck am I? I'd like to get either out of the water or get out of here because it smells funny. So
it's interesting. A lot of creatures are misunderstood, and could be the same with this Bigfoot.
That's it. I think a lot of things are assumed, generalized. They're not a lot. People often jump to conclusions about things or other people. So why wouldn't we jump to conclusions about something that might be able to hurt us, especially if it's big and scary? Well, the more time we spend with them, the more we learn about them. There's all kinds of behaviors that come out, such as, a number of us feel that they with these heightened senses of smell and eyesight and hearing, they may actually have some behaviors that run parallel to some of the people we know of that are autistic. In other words, a heightened sense of nervousness, a heightened sense of curiosity, but come here, get away, that type of thing. And we notice how often they like to seem to watch people. And yet when they get too close, they seem to get quite nervous. But the aggression really, really seems to be minimal. And the reason I say that is not because we're all taught that, but I've got a tremendous number of contacts and networks all over the country and into Europe and Australia. And I've got very, very, very few people that have actually been threatened or hurt. I know a few people that have been beamed by rocks, not very many. Most of the time, they miss. And in 2020, we were back working, and we had some activity coming into camp. We did have some rocks thrown. So I had a 4-ounce rock that actually I threw the picture in with. And I know Shane and Randy had done some work where they were having rocks pelting them or thrown around the tent. I don't even think it was hitting the tent, but they ended up putting black dots on the rocks and taking them back up the hill, and eventually they were reused again. So there's been some real interesting interaction. There we go. That's my favorite rock. So
now, can I ask you a question? And this is
sure.
This is entirely speculative, but Are
as
you
so
ever,
much as so much of this stuff is, yes.
right? But this one's kind of way out there. But it's a lot of assumption. But are you ever concerned with the idea of building familiarity with these beings, and then perhaps increasing the risk that they would then approach other people who may not be so understanding or eager, and come into harm?
I guess my take on it is that they are so wary,
Hmm.
and I think their intelligence is so much higher than
Okay.
the majority of people give them credit for. Just look at all the bodies we have of them stacked around everywhere. It's really, really minimal. I think they're so wary that they are just extremely careful. The juveniles are more likely to make mistakes. Maybe an older individual that loses a sense of sensitivity with hearing and sight and smell may make some more mistakes. There's certainly accidents from time to time where somebody gets bopped or hit by a vehicle, more often than not, limping off the road. There's all kinds of stories. So what the believability is versus the verification, obviously the species is unverified, and so no matter, so anybody can say anything. And getting back to your point, I wouldn't be surprised if that happens from time to time. And most people are pretty good at leaving the area.
Yeah.
It is interesting though with the body thing. I mean, all right, maybe they do look after their dead, but just say there is a stray one that, there must be odd stray ones or something that does get injured and doesn't get back home, and just goes somewhere and dies. I mean, it's just so strange we're not finding anything like body wise, bones wise.
Well,
Or maybe they have been found and we just not hearing about it on
that's the
YouTube.
situation. What isn't reported and why? And then when people do report it, many people just disregard the report. So there was a wonderful account of an older fella, or he was older when he told the story, but he was a young man when he made the shot. And he was up in Ontario or Manitoba, I forget which, but Canada, and he shot, I believe, a moose. I don't think it was an elk. And turns out that there was a Sasquatch in the area that took the hit and died. Now, did that really happen? A friend of mine, Dr. Kurt Nelson, went up and interviewed him twice, and I knew another person who interviewed him as well, and they found him extremely believable. So there's an example. And how many times could that happen where something gets, an individual gets wounded and goes off and passes away? Well, if a lot of us wouldn't be surprised to think that other members of their family unit would lend a hand in these situations. Humans eat humans. So is it possible that there's some cannibalization? In some situations, I wouldn't be surprised. Is that typical? I would be surprised if it was typical. But my opinion's my opinion, and everybody's got one. And the most amazing thing about this whole phenomena is we don't have a body, but we have reports, and we have things like footprints, we have scat, we have predator kills with, shall we say, signatures, the way they kill deer, and then we have other things going on where they're coming into homes and either entering the house or looking in the window, or the way they operate with the dogs, the cattle, the horses. All these things are, again, Cliff Brackman's congruent information. There's just a lot and then we have handprints. We have, we have enough evidence to, not to mention the vocalizations that don't match other species of wildlife in our areas, whether black bear or raccoon or fox and barred owl, of course, are species that just, certainly fake out many people, and many people are really nervous and jump to conclusions anyway. But I'll just say it's a great mystery.
Yeah, there's a lot out there, isn't there?
Yes.
Well, let's go through some of the images that you sent us.
Sure.
Because you picked up, some tracks and stuff like that. Do you want to? Shall I just pull some up,
sure.
or do you want to go through them yourself? Yeah, just.
Yeah, just go ahead and pull what you feel
Okay,
comfortable with, and
let's
we'll
go.
take it from there. All right. Now, first of all, when you look at that, that looks like a human track.
Mhm.
So most people would look at that and go, huh, somebody's been walking around barefoot, because that's the most likely scenario. But in this case, we know it's from a 9.5 inch, and this happened to be from a, okay, whoa, I'm wrong. This particular one's 11.
Bit
And
bigger, yeah.
as I recall, Shane had told me that there were 3 different sizes in the new property that he was guided to. And what was interesting for us is the fact that we're looking at 2 different groups of them with similar sized footprints and no big male around. So we're wondering if it isn't possible we've got a female or 2 in the area. And this could be a cycle part of the year for possible breeding season. Don't know, but it's just interesting that a lot of these footprints that are younger are so human-like that most people would simply discard them as that. But when you realize where these tracks are going and what other activities are being included, such as hunting shellfish, mussels, and also the fact that the heels are elongated, the toes are elongated, and there are other characters in the foot that I need to refamiliarize with. But we're finding some different characters that don't match typical human feet. I'm actually in a human foot study right now. I want to know the average, the variety, the extremes, and just get more familiar. The more familiar I am with us, the more easier I would suspect it'll be to spot some differences when I run into more of theirs.
Mhm.
Yeah, that is
There aren't a
interesting.
lot of kids out there with a 7-inch foot that are running around in swamp water 4 miles from the road at 23 degrees.
Now, Dan, with that picture, what I was noticing is that there does seem to be profoundly pointed big toe and secondary, and the rest of them kind of slope down. Now,
Mm.
and I'm no expert at this, so please forgive me, but
Mhm.
sometimes I hear that, well, that looks like a human foot because through, generations of wearing shoes, it kind of smashes our toes at
Right.
that angle. Do you know of any reference to that, or is just foot morphology that broad that it can have the slope, or it could be straight across between the
I
toes?
think you hit it with that. I think foot morphology is very wide and variable, and
Okay.
we don't really even know all their I mean, we have such minimal number of handprints
Mm.
and minimal number of footprints that are actually legit, um, versus I think there's tremendous numbers of people that have evidence, but
Mhm.
we have such fractional evidence because the unifying factor isn't really happening. There's like almost a competition to gather the material, and a lot of that material does not come to light all the time. So we're still in a serious learning process, and argumentative conflict with what we're learning is common. Does that make sense at all?
Absolutely. That's a perfect explanation.
Oh,
And I
cool, man.
appreciate that
Thanks.
because, yeah, I'm just on the outside looking into this, and
Sure.
certainly it's fascinating, but I don't pretend to know a whole lot. So I
I
appreciate
think what they've got going for them is that a lot of their prints are so similar to ours, at
Mm.
least with the juveniles and immatures, that they don't have to be as wary because most people aren't going to take them. I mean, what? There's no way. It's pretty much a standard response to the idea that there's a hairy man that came out in the middle of the night and dropped human footprints, you know,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the 2-to-1 ratio is what we've all been taught. But what are the extremes? I don't know. I'm real curious.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I'll go through all the little the track images,
Sure.
and then we can do all them. That's a really good cast. That
That's our 9.5.
yeah.
And that's the guy that dropped over 100 images the last time we were in Missouri, and as a unit. And notice the elongated heel and the narrowness of the track. So right away, this is a questionable track. But when you go out and you check and you see some of the strides and the compliant gait and some of the other things that it exhibits, it does differ from a typical standard human doing the same thing.
Well,
And also the timing of when these tracks were placed in the dark, in cold temperatures, lake edge. I mean, you can hurt your feet pretty bad walking around in the dark on the edge of a sharp sticks and rocks and all that good stuff. So
yeah, it's not recommended, is it? So the real narrowing there, is that because there's an arch?
could very well be. Could very well be.
Where it goes thinner, is it just off the ground there, and so it loses a little bit of it? I mean, it is interesting, isn't it? I know Shane, like you say yourself, are getting into this foot thing at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess this was another. Oh, I can see it there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically from the track line that particular cast was made.
Oh, right. So, okay. Great.
That's
okay,
about a 9.5 or 9 3/4 inch print. Mm-hmm. But typically these I like to call them the target species. They have, or it should be target species complex, because we don't know what we've got with all the variety of looks that they sport, from ape-like to very human-like in some ways facially, at least according to the claims, and certainly the artists. What's interesting here too is the fact that we had a 5-inch print in my county here in Wisconsin. And I sent that to a buddy of mine who happens to be in charge of livestock depredation for the state of Montana. He was in charge of Fish and Wildlife. He was in charge with some of DNR and some of the other organizations. And I wanted to catch his reaction to what this was, because it was a pretty typical little track with a big toe. And his response after 2 days, he didn't tell me right away, he took a while. He said, "That is the most unusual yearling black bear print I've ever seen." And that was the standard response. So I just smiled and said, "Gotcha."
Sure.
That's funny. Oh, I've just clicked the wrong thing there. We talked about the rocks a little bit. I've got some more rock. Actually, this one, this is interesting. What was going on here?
Okay, I've got a private property I've been monitoring now for over 10 years, and a single elderly woman lives there. And she's had incredible experiences over the years, but she's never had a visual. Tracks are difficult to find. I've got some snow tracks, but that's about it. Recently, I elected to try this in a wood lot that I've left alone for a decade, knowing that we get interesting vocalizations and wood knocks from this area. And basically, I had been putting out things just, trying to go mainly with apples, which are a normal natural item that one might find in the woodlands here in southwestern Wisconsin. But I also put an orange out. And in this case, I had a little bun or something like that. And you'll see some yellow to the left, and that's like tassels from somebody graduating from high school. Okay. The tassels were taken. Yeah, I think in the span of 3 weeks, I had something like 9 apples taken. Not one orange was taken, which is also interesting because Shane has never had an orange taken down there. Now, I just got through actually interviewing some people, or questioning some people from Florida today, including Stacy Brown, and I'm told that's a naturalized fruit here, and they're eating oranges in Florida. Okay, well, that makes sense. So we're kind of wondering, is it possible that the artificial tampering that we might be doing on some of these fruits, in other words, here's fresh, organic, here's something that is literally preserved, that has been literally painted to look great, that isn't so great. Is it possible that that has something to do with this? We're still in limbo with that and looking into it.
Interesting.
So, yeah. There's a lot of factors to consider, and does it also come down to individuals? I mean, I can't stand cauliflower. Some people love it. So there you go.
Now, I understand that bananas are not real popular either.
I've heard that as well.
Yeah.
I've also heard if you peel them, it makes a difference. Now, of course, there's a large number of people that are not very happy with the idea that food is utilized or offered. I'm not, I don't personally get too excited about that, but a lot of people do. And I do know of situations where apparently large amounts of food were handed out on a regular basis. And when it was eliminated, there was some reactions that weren't very, that were described as not very happy. And so that's certainly understandable, especially if somebody gets a sugar fix or something like that. So who knows?
Yeah, stick to oranges.
Yeah.
So,
There you go.
I just think with food, though, absolutely anything can take the food. It's very hard, isn't it, to prove
Well, it is. It really is. And that's where the tracks come in. But in the case with Shane and Randy, they've been working with situations where you can put the food in containers that are that's going to eliminate who is going to get it. If there aren't bear in the area, which we're told there aren't, and bear sign is fairly easy to note. So let's say the bears are gone and the food's gone, you've got two choices. Either people are taking it or they are taking it. So that helps us. And then when we find tracks that they leave, that pretty well ices the deal. So
yeah.
Personally, I'm much more in favor of using naturalized food items like a small game or road-killed deer or something like that that would naturally occur there, rather than bringing in some exotic, incredible. You've got to have more of these for me, or I'm going to be rather upset. So.
Yeah, no, it's a good idea, definitely.
Yeah, respectfully and playing the game softly seems wise.
I think these pictures actually came together, the one with the tree and then this table.
This is on the private property that I've been monitoring.
Yeah.
We've had statues moved around. We've had other things. I've had river rocks brought up stream rocks brought up from the creek, and they'd have algae on them and things like that. And they've been placed on the rock wall behind the house. I've had chairs moved. I've had all kinds of things that raccoons can't lift moved around. We've had on top of the house, they'll take some of the screens that are on top of the leaf ducts. They'll pull those out and gently lay them in the grass. They'll take some of those big pipes, take them off the house, and put them underneath the clothes racks or the clothesline area. And I've been playing games a little bit with bricks, where the brick I see was moved to the number 5, to the 5 o'clock position. I'd move it to the 6 o'clock. Next night, I'd come back. It has been moved to the 7 o'clock position. Playing with coins and other items. We've either got jays and crows and red fox and squirrels and raccoons that are smart enough to fool me by not sliding those coins off the little tile. And what's also interesting is I have a friend in Georgia, Keith Bearden, and he told me that he was having fine china plates taken and picked up and gently put vertical. Well, I was finding coins that were slid off and put vertical. And there were some 8-inch impressions that appeared to be feet in the area along the house. So as far as gifting, I have received a 2-foot-long orange fuse out of like a hose siphon or something, and that was orange in color. And then the most interesting, I think to me, was a burdock plant with the roots ripped off, laid on the gifting rock. And that coincided with the year that I burned myself. And what's interesting about the burdock is that the roots are cancer inhibitors, and the actual plant itself is something that's almost like an infection fighter. And so it almost coincided with the burn. And I'm not saying that it did, but I find it an interesting selection and an interesting situation that would have been placed there like that, in a place where we were trading rocks and marbles and trinkets and things of that nature.
It's fascinating, isn't it? This gifting that goes on, or like you say, playing with the coins, or I mean, I can't imagine a crow moving a brick. Maybe
Right.
something a bit bigger than a squirrel.
Or a 50-pound statue.
Of course, yeah, of course. I mean, how can these things think we can understand them, and why are they not all trying to communicate with us? Or are they, and people aren't seeing the signs?
There's all kinds of input on different ideas regarding certain individuals, and I think some of that's probably going to come to light over time as more people decide I'm going to step forward and explain what happened to me. There's one-on-ones that happen in a flash, and then it's over, and people are left standing there. And these are the claims, these are the descriptions. I wasn't there, I didn't see it, but it's just interesting. I think I'll just say this: if Coco the gorilla could sign 1,000 English words, and that was the claim, but she couldn't speak them because of the limited anatomical anatomy that she has. But if she had that anatomy, she could have spoke those words. If our target species, or at least some of them, I'll call it a target species complex, has the capability to make those sounds and noises, some of which we have recorded, yeah, I could see where they're repeating words. And some people claim that they use Sioux. Some people claim that they use English. Some people claim that they use Spanish. So that seems really far out. But on the other hand, a crow can do some of that.
Yeah, they can imitate
Exactly.
anything they're hearing. Then sure.
If a little 5-year-old child can pick up incredible language, and I've witnessed it, even 2 and 3-year-olds, how about a 46-year-old male Sasquatch that happens to hang out in the ravine 60 feet in the forest from a house that's got a loud television and kids repeating the same stuff over and over and over? I've interviewed people in Indiana, Tennessee, numerous other states where some of the claims were backed up privately, and I would seek out other people in the area to back up the claims said, and it was pretty amazing. Some of the things that they're saying certain words over and over. And Stan Courtney down in Illinois is quite a recorder, and he's had some experiences, and there's numerous other people as well. So I think we have a fraction of what's coming, and I think it's going to be very interesting.
I know the First Nations, many tribes called them the great mimics and stuff that's
sure
they could mimic and stuff. What I'm always curious about is they and this is a conversation I just had the other day. But it seems pretty clear that they have a pretty robust, complex language from the Sierra Sounds and other sources, according to Scott Nelson, I think is, and I think there's merit to that. But there's also histories in the First Nations of them trading between the tribes of First Nations people and the forest people. And so you would think there would have to be at least some form of communication happening there, whether it's verbal, whether it's symbolic or whatever. But I wonder if they do or are able to not only mimic a language but understand what sounds mean to us. In other words, could they have a rudimentary understanding of our language? And again, speculative, but it's very curious.
I at this point in time, from what I've seen and from what I've heard, nothing surprises me. And so how extreme can some of the individuals be? That's amazing. Sibylla Christine Irwin had done an illustration with a friend of mine. And years ago, he had a situation where he had a couple of males that he walked in on when he was deer hunting. And there was some sign language involved between he and them. And he didn't feel comfortable at all, but they seemed respectful, but yet they seemed intimidating. Of course, they would be with their size, and especially if you didn't even believe in their existence to begin with. So there's, like I
That's
say, I think we're going to be amazed at what we find over time, and we're just at a rudimentary stage of fragmentation regarding the information that's out there.
That was Ernie's encounter. I think you're talking about. I've talked to Ernie, and he came across two of them. They were hunting basically. He was hunting deer, and they were, and he was signalling to his shoulder, patting
Yes.
his chest, and then pointing to him, and using the other thing. I mean, it was a fascinating account. They were obviously trying to communicate with him.
Mm-hmm.
And what was funny, he said he didn't know what they were saying. He kind of copied it, and then maybe thought later this thing was trying to say "get out of my space," and then he's repeated it to who knows. But
You.
yeah, just great information there. That
Yeah.
there is some sort of and this is the details that we want. And I just do want to make a quick announcement that this Saturday 6 p.m. Central, I'm going to open the Encounter Hub again. If you want to come on the Encounter Hub, please email me. If anybody doesn't know, it's a space where we can meet. We don't go live. It's not recorded. It's for people that have had encounters and they don't want to come on YouTube. They don't want to show their faces. They just want somewhere to come and talk. And like I say, if you send me an email, Daniela at hiddenexistence.com, let me know if you want to come on. I'll send you a link. And I know some guys in the chat have already been to an Encounter Hub before. So I'm hoping some of you will get in touch and share some of your experiences with us, because we do seem to learn a lot more from people when there's no pressure of a camera, of an audience, or anybody, judging them, the feeling of that. And it is a safe space to come. So I hope I see some of you guys there who want to share your stories, but don't want to come on the show. So I've done that. Yeah, these things are so fascinating, and not only mimicking or copying what we say, but I had a dog who could read my body language like nothing else. He knew by the way I was getting dressed already whether he was going to be coming out with me or not.
That's cool.
He knew everything, what my patterns, what I did. And you just have to think, if these things can sit and study people, how much they can read
Sure.
of what somebody's going to do and when they're going to do it, and what mood they're in. Because my beagle was incredible. I mean, he could really read me like a book. It was funny. But they seem to have these skills, don't they? This perception.
I think they read us very well, and if there is some communication amongst them, which I would be surprised if there wasn't, they're certainly picking up information from their elders, their neighbors, etc., regarding certain people. And of course, we have behavioral patterns that are repetitive, and same car that we drive to work at the same time and go to sleep pretty much the same time, and so it might be that some of their behaviors are governed by the behaviors that we exhibit. Different landowners, farmers, property owners out in rural areas, fishermen, etc. So, real interesting.
Yeah, it really is. Let me get to a few questions. Just while I put some to the side here. We've got Sasquatch Australia. How you doing? Says, hi Dan. Did you have any experiences in Tasmania?
All good ones. Unfortunately, nothing with primates, and I was really hoping. We ended up going to all the different corners of Tasmania. I was there for over a week, and we basically lived. We spent money on gas to get to as many places as we could, and I photographed everything I could find that was alive. So, but unfortunately, no yowies or no Tasmanian
Devils
wolves or anything like that. So,
yeah. Oh, that's a shame. Hi Jody. Got Jody in. How do you suppose they learn sign language? International is different than what the Native Americans used.
I'm not one to even know. I would be surprised. Again, their intelligence and repetition of certain things may well have led them down that path. And if they're like us, some of us can handle 3 different languages, no problem. Others struggle with one. So I would suspect a wide variety of interpretations and uses by them. So
It's interesting, isn't it?
it's a lovely question and a hard one to answer.
Yeah. I mean, what will be interesting is I know Shane picked up some new audio, some vocal, and I know Scott's been looking at it. And if this is a language, and if it is similar to the Sierra sounds, and these are so far apart.
Are you set up to play that at all? He said we could.
Oh, I don't. Well, can we, Shane? Did he say we could? We can play it
Yeah,
again.
Shane said we could.
Okay, I'll have to find that again then. Hang on.
Okay, I'm sorry I didn't make that.
No, that's okay. I have to be 100%. I've got the right one. Shane, if you ring, can you remember what it was, what the file was called? Because I don't want to play. I'll play the wrong one because it could have anything on it. So I've got a few here. If you can remember, Shane, just let me know. Yeah, I've got. Yeah, sorry. Just give me a second.
Getting back to the sign language, I think that maybe the reference of sign language isn't, the official. Maybe it's more like, get out or you go there, that kind of broad gesture kind of sign language rather than, an actual American or your worldwide sign languages. But I don't know. I'm just assuming, I guess.
Well, there's certainly tremendous interpretations by a body stance, the way a person stands, the way a person looks, the way a person behaves or acts, and that very well may carry into some of the ways that they operate too. And there's certainly specialists in that area. There's so many gamuts to all this, with the physiology, anatomy, and behavior, and all the different aspects to the type of life that they may lead. That
yeah,
there's plenty to do.
And if you think about all of the ways that we communicate, I think words are very little of it, but like you said, body language, like even facial, looks and gestures and like if I'm talking to you and my eyes are drifting around, no matter what I'm saying, I'm really not paying attention. I mean,
there you go.
We communicate in so many broad ways that perhaps
or the nervousness that they'll exhibit sometimes from behind a tree with a swaying, or there's some autistic type behavioral sequences there that really lends to one's thinking regarding to maybe they're quite nervous or apprehensive or things of that nature.
And even you hear about that even when they're winding themselves up, like witnesses are seeing them, just kind of go, and getting more and more agitated before they do a bluff charge or before they just, go start tearing stuff up.
Right.
So you're right. That's a great observation.
I've almost found it. Just give me 1 second.
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. The first vocalization that I heard on the private property that led me to think, okay, I've got something. I was out there at night recording different things and trying to get a good baseline of the owls, the coyotes, the canines, etc. And I hit up on the hill, coyotes and dogs kind of arguing or sounding off back and forth. It was kind of a ar, and all of a sudden, within a couple of minutes of that, I got this. Going across the valley, word bass. I couldn't feel it. I've got relatives that have actually felt the vibrations go through them in different responses and exchanges for whatever was making the noise out in the swamp. But this was fantastic, and I gave myself a thumbs up and sent the vocalization to a friend of mine in Colorado and a friend of mine in Montana. Both men wrote me back real quick and simply said, "Congratulations, you hit." They do that here.
Wow.
Right, I found it. Sorry, it took me a while to grab that.
Okay, sure.
So this was the audio that Shane picked up. Here we go.
Mm.
So
Love it.
yeah, but
You
this
do,
is what I'm saying. If that if I got stuck there, if that is language is similar and that's over 2,000 miles apart from Sierra sounds, then that's going to be pretty fascinating.
Oh yeah, and we think there were two of them in that clip. So
Mm. Um,
juvenile and either sibling or adult.
it's very exciting, isn't it? And I really feel like we're getting somewhere with this. I know it costs money and technology, but it's happening, and I feel like we could really find out so much more. We just need to reach out to those that aren't talking as well, for people to come forward, give us a little bit more information and share a little bit more with us, because I feel like there is more data out there. There is more
Well,
clues.
there definitely is more. Many are concerned about the welfare of the individuals and
Yeah.
juveniles, family units, etc. And that is going to be a big aspect to this, I think. And then, of course, there's all kinds of claims that go with observations of these fellas, and diff, you know Thomas Steenberg kind of did it well. He had a number of different people observe one individual and isolated on the details with each individual and got different details from each one. So what I'm saying is that our interpretations and our descriptions and our ability to relay with memory and detail can vary, and that can make things more complicated than what they really are. So
We don't need any more complications doing this subject. Look, we've come to the end of the hour. We do need to hook up again and carry this on, because we're really just scratching the surface and getting to know you, Dan. So it has been fascinating. Thank you for coming on tonight. And we definitely have to do it again.
well, thanks for having me, and I'm delighted to be helpful and exchange on this incredible subject.
Absolutely. There's so much more to share, isn't there, and learn.
There is. It's like we've just barely scratched the surface.
Exactly.
Hard to believe that was an hour. It was like 10 minutes.
That's the thing. That's the thing. But it's a good excuse to get back together again and keep going at this subject. And obviously, I'm following Shane and Randy and what they're doing as well in the 400, because I just really like what they're doing, and it's been consistent, and they are coming up with stuff all the time.
Well, I just talked with him this morning, and our next gig will be in Oklahoma. And we're excited about the drone capability and what else we can come up with. They've got another, I'll say, information gatherer that hopefully will hit. And and then after that, we'll be back in Missouri, and they're going to be having quite a time through the year. So I know they're going to be working with a documentary for the next year plus. So we're all excited about that.
Yeah, definitely. Me too. Last little thing from Randy Harrington. Language means they can turn their thoughts inwards and think in words. It's interesting. Definitely have an ability to communicate or try to communicate in some way, more than any other animal that I know. But yeah, it's fascinating. Damien K, can you send me an email, please, Damien? It'll be good to get in touch with you. Daniela at hiddenexistenceof.com. And of course, if people want to come on the Encounter Hub on Saturday, it's going to be 6 p.m. Central. You do need to email me, because I do need to send you a link. And it's literally just for people who've had encounters and want to talk about them. It's not a live show. There's not going to be an audience there. It's just you guys and a place for you to talk and share. So I hope I do hear from some of you in the next few days. All right, guys, until the next time, thanks for being here. Thanks again, Dan, Brent. I look forward to seeing you guys soon. Brent, you're on in a couple of hours, Paranormal Portal tonight.
Yeah. Yep. I'll be going on at 7 Pacific or 9 Central. So
9 Central, everyone head over there and go and say hello to Brent. Until the next time, guys, everyone had a good night. Thank you, Maggie. Appreciate that.
Aw,
Everyone have a good night, and we'll see you all soon. Good night.
good night.